Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Harditz, and Monday Night Football is over. It's 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and I'm excited, everyone. This has been great. Week 1 has finally come to an end. Not the best, maybe finish to Monday night that we could have hoped for. Just far too many kind of kicker takes and kickers sucking and kickers ruining the general game experience for my liking. But, that's a little bit of a personal problem. I think in general, this was a pretty good football, all we could ask in week 1, especially from some of these offenses. So just real quickly with this podcast, we're going to go through the Steelers went over the Giants, the Titans went over the Broncos, and then I have some quick people I want to touch on with the waiver wire and give some suggestions out there. So starting off with the Steelers beating the Giants 26-16. Big Ben, by all accounts, looked pretty good. 21 for 32, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He was limping around a little bit. It wasn't like it was vintage, 2018 Big Ben. His ADOT was only 7.2 yards downfield, so I wasn't trying to make too much happen. But, to see him go out there, finish a game and not having any, major setbacks, it's all you really could ask for. So kudos to Big Ben there. I don't think it changes his kind of fantasy outlook moving forward all that much. We're not going to get that 2017, 2018 guy who I think could threaten to lead the league in pass attempts, but at the same time, in the right matchup, he's still plenty capable, I think, of flirting with 300 yards and multiple touchdowns. So, continue to treat Big Ben kind of in that firm mid-tier to high-end QB2 range moving forward. Big story with Pittsburgh, though, is in the running back room. James Conner, all 8 touches in the season, suffers a sprained ankle. Didn't look good before having that happen anyway. Only 6 carries, 9 yards, and 2 catches for 8 yards on 4 targets. A lot of us on the old Twitter sphere thought that he was just benched from a bad performance because Benny Snell came in, was giving him a little juice early on, but it was in fact a sprained ankle. Adam Schefter said that the team is optimistic for a timely return, but, it's just tough to know with Conner. I was one of, the fantasy analysts out there saying that, yeah, you should take the chance on the guy. And, it certainly seemed like he did have the 3-down role for the entire 15 snaps he played. So it's really unfortunate. You never want to see anyone get hurt. I realize it was a higher concern with him. And, that was why he was going, in rounds 3 through 5 and not round 1. If we could, turn injuries off, James Conner would be one of the top 5, top 8 RBs in the league in terms of fantasy production. So it's unfortunate this happened, but the big takeaway is that Benny Snell should be on a fantasy roster in almost any league. And look, I don't think he deserves to be in this upper tier of handcuffs, but clearly if James Conner is going to miss time, Benny Snell, we can fire him up for at least 15 rushes per week. It was still split a little bit. If you look at the snaps, Snell ended up at 29. Jalen Samuels was right there at 20. I still don't think they quite trust Snell as a receiving back, but hey, 113 yards on 19 carries, and he looked good doing it. I know Snell caught a lot of grief as a rookie for just, being a snail-like back and not having that type of burst, but he actually did show some wiggle out there. I know the matchup isn't the toughest, but overall solid performance by Benny Snell. And again, if Conner misses time, we're going to be ranking Snell as a top 15, top 18. Maybe that's a little high. He'll at least be an RB2, top 24. I can guarantee that. Again, he's not Tony Pollard, Alexander Madison level, where if, Dalvin Cook or Ezekiel Elliott went down, those guys are legit RB1s. But, definitely worse people to have on your fantasy bench than Snell, because we do know Conner's unfortunate tendency to get injured. Wide receiver room, Deontay Johnson was on his way to having a rough game, had a really bad drop, and you wonder if we were looking at, Dante Moncrief in 2019 all over again, but guy came back strong. Big Ben ran right back to him to play after the drop. He ended up with team high 10 targets, 5 catches, 57 yards, no scores. So great to see from Deontay. Juju Smith-Schuster was also fantastic. Only 6 targets, but he caught all 6 of them for 69 yards and 2 scores. And again, I know some people just don't quite buy, just the idea that Juju is this true wide receiver 1. And Antonio Brown was that guy when he was there. Is Juju the guy that can really win consistently all over the field? And I don't know, but luckily he plays almost all of his snaps from the friendly confines of the slot. And when he's got a guy like Big Ben back there, he can put the ball where it needs to be. So we did see it seemed like some easier completions for Juju and even Deontay throughout this game. That's just, another reality of having Big Ben under center and not Mason Rudolph or something named Doug Hodges. So great to see from those top 2 guys. James Washington found his way into the end zone, 2 catches, 34 yards, and Chase Claypool had an incredible catch down the sideline. Don't be one of those people that say Chase Claypool is a tight end. That's not fair. I have not seen that in, the limited amount of film I've watched him Claypool. I've seen him blow up a lot of cornerbacks at Notre Dame, in the blocking game. But just because you're a good blocker doesn't mean you're a tight end. Claypool can do it all. They seem to love him. It still is the James Washington show, though. He was at 25 routes compared to just 7 for Claypool. Deontay and Juju are in the mid-30s, so it's clear, who the top two are in Pittsburgh. But for now, Washington has continued to hold off Claypool. Tight end room, pretty unfortunate, everyone. It seemed like a situation where Ebron could really take over, but it's a two tight end system here in Pittsburgh. Ebron had 40 snaps, 24 routes. Vance McDonald had 38 snaps, 16 routes. Both of them had 2 targets. Look, if one of these guys gets hurt, which, hey, with Vance especially, it's not like health is something he's really known for keeping. But if one of these guys gets hurt, we can revisit this situation. But right now, it's just like Minnesota, where 2 pretty talented tight ends together canceling each other out. Moving on to the Giants side of the ball, Daniel Jones, 279 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, took 3 sacks. Looked a little skittish at times. I mean, he had an awesome touchdown, Darius Slayton, down the middle on deep post that kind of showed off some of his arm talent and what he's capable of when things are clicking. He also chipped in 22 yards on the ground. I mean, it definitely could have been worse. I mean, going against a Steelers defense that was number 1 in the league last year in havoc and pressure rate, I was kind of expecting him to completely dud. So the fact he put up any sort of numbers was a good sign, but, wasn't all that encouraging with that said. I mean, only 6.9 yard average target depth, a lot of dinking and dunking going on, but really wasn't as bad as Saquon Barkley's night. I mean, oh my goodness, cannot blame this guy. I mean, I still maintain that Saquon, if we had to play the aliens in one game to try to defend Planet Earth's volume in a football Space Jam type collaboration, I mean, I think Saquon Barkley is going to be our RB1, but man, we got to get this dude some blockers. Negative 0.7 yards before contact on the night for Saquon. 15 carries for a whopping 6 yards. That's going to be a big time sheesh from me. Kind of saved the day with a 660 receiving line on 9 targets. I mean, he had like 2 or 3 positive plays and he had 2 hurdles on the night. So, I mean, the guy can still do it, but just brutal effort from the Giants O-line tonight. I mean, they're going to need to get that. They're going to have easier matchups down the road. I mean, playing Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, and just that entire Steelers front 7, Bud Dupree had himself a hell of a game. In particular, doing that, you're not going to have a lot of big days, but I think fantasy investors would have liked more than 6 yards. Obviously, Saquon isn't going anywhere as a high-end RB1. Dion Lewis, 1 carry, 1 target. He wasn't involved. It was a Saquon show, 88% snaps. No reason to overthink one bad performance. And quickly with the wide receivers, Darius Slayton's season caught 6 of 9 targets, 102 yards, pair of touchdowns. Second one was a little easier, just kind of in garbage time. Sterling Shepard caught all 6 of his targets for 47 yards with a really high slot rate. I do have concerns when Golden Tate comes back that could push Shepard out of the slot. I was looking last year at kind of who are the league's more sensitive wide receivers and inside versus outside, and you have guys like Adam Thielen, Chris Godwin, where you can put them wherever and they're going to ball out. But Sterling Shepard was one of these guys where he was very sensitive to the slot, and they were using Golden Tate there more. So, for his ceiling, I think it'd be better if Golden Tate continues to miss time with his hamstring injury. We'll see if that's the case. Evan Engram, very disappointing. 2 catches for 9 yards on 7 targets. Nobody else out there had more than 2. This was a brutal matchup. I mean, I don't think anyone was starting these guys to begin with. Moving on, when we have good weeks with the Giants, which is not going to feature a lot in September, but, once October comes around, Daniel Jones is going to be back on that, QB1 borderline, maybe high-end QB2 worst case, just because he does throw enough and run enough to put that up. And these wide receivers, and this is why we've been saying on this podcast to draft them throughout this offseason. I mean, they were all priced as wide receiver 3s, and, that's kind of what Shepard put up in this spot, with the 6 catches, 47 yards. But Slayton, he's putting up wide receiver 1 numbers with 100+ yards and 2 touchdowns. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be super consistent, but, at a minimum, these are very cheap ways to get into a passing game that, again, when they're not facing the Steelers, are going to be putting up even more numbers. So that was a fun one. Titans, Broncos, a little bit less fun. Titans won 16-14. Freaking Stephen Gustowski missed 3 field goals, 1 extra point, and had many mean things said about him, but he made some 25-yard chip shot at the end of the game. We'll get called a hero by some nincompoop out there on the internet. I don't get it. I wish kickers weren't involved at all, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, big story here was Ryan Tannehill, 43 pass attempts, 249 yards, 2 scores. I mean, the efficiency wasn't there, but just seeing that volume in a game that, I guess it was more just a total of plays and carries than anything because Derrick Henry had 31 rush attempts. It wasn't like they got away from trying to, hashtag establish it, but Tannehill really did just rack that up. I mean, he only had more than 30 pass attempts in 4 of 13 starts last season. He was more likely to throw 20 or fewer times as he did in 5 separate occasions. So Tannehill also chipped in 14 yards on the ground. Looks like they're going to open up at least a little bit moving forward, which is really good sign for not only our guy, A.J. Brown, but also man of the hour, Corey Davis, who went for 101 yards. Third time in his career, he's had over 100 yards. And, I mean, when we looked at this receiving core throughout the offseason, the assumption was that only one person is going to be able to break out because they're going to be so run heavy. But, if week 1 was any indication, they're going to be having to throw the ball around a lot more. And, Corey Davis is free. He's free out there. I still think Jonnu Smith could be the number 2 guy in this pass game more weeks than not. But, hey, you know what? I mean, it happened with Devontae Parker last year. And, fun fact, both Corey Davis and Devontae Parker came in at the combine, 6'3", 216 pounds. Both guys are 2 of the only dudes in the league with success over Stephon Gilmore. I'm not trying to talk you guys into Corey Davis. I know it might seem that way. I'm really not trying to. It's probably more of a week 1 Sammy Watkins situation. I think that's kind of how we have to approach it. But with that said, if you have that Randall Cobb or that, kind of wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 on your bench that, just week 1 came by and you're not getting that usage you want, Corey Davis is there, and he's not the worst, waiver wire guy to give a look. So kudos to him for the big day. A.J. Brown, really slow start, but they really were feeding him a lot in the second half, particularly on the final drive, and they dialed up a, goal line fade that could have really iced the game and been huge for them. But it looked like to me, I got to watch a little closer tomorrow. It seemed like Tannehill missed them, but A.J. Brown really looked like he had a shot at it. I mean, literally just over the fingertips. I don't know if he maybe could have dove or what. Tannehill should have put the ball in a better spot, but very close for A.J. Brown to adding a touchdown to that total. Hats off Jonnu Smith, 4 catches, 36 yards, and a score. That guy is so scary with the ball in his hands. Since 2010, only George Kittle has averaged more yards after contact per reception at the tight end position. Absolutely love seeing Jonnu continue to get fed. If he's available, in fantasy on your waiver wires and you need a tight end, he's not. I don't think he's gonna get 7 targets on a weekly basis. But if you just want to line the tight ends up and say, hey, here you go, these guys are all getting 5 targets, who you think's gonna make the most out of them? Jonnu might be the guy that you end up picking. So good stuff there. On the Broncos side of the ball, Drew Lock, 216 yards and a score, had a chance to ice the game with a potential dagger to Deshaun Hamilton deep, but overthrew him late in the fourth quarter. He showed some ability out there. He continues to kind of be this guy that can create occasionally off script, which, it's good to see because feasibly you can teach the quarterbacks to rein things in in the scheme, and then if they can create on their own, even better. Now I realize this doesn't work with everyone. I'm far from a quarterback evaluator myself, but we have seen just flashes from Locke. I don't think he's going to be a fantasy factor anytime soon, but it's the guys. This was his fifth or sixth, I believe his 6th career start, so, would not be throwing in the towel on him just yet. And the fact they kind of let him throw that deep ball to Deshaun with a chance to win the game, I think shows that the coaching staff remains high on him. So better days to come for Drew Lock, and particularly once he gets his number 1 target back, Courtland Sutton, who did miss this game because Jerry Jeudy, my goodness. I mean, the dude had 2 pretty bad drops, but you just look at the rest of the game, and this guy's routes were unbelievable. And I believe it was PFF's own Mike Renner who said that Judy's one of the best route runners to come out in the last decade or so, and I can see why. I mean, this guy is going to have an amazing highlight clip in seemingly 3 or 4 games of those one-on-one shots with him versus the corner. It just looks smooth, explosive. When he got the ball in his hands, he looked really good as well. Team high 8 targets for Jeudy. Even once Sutton gets back, I mean, Jeudy looks like someone that might be good enough to produce on his own. Another guy that has that, factor going for him, just the it factor, was Noah Fant. Caught 5 of 6 targets, 81 yards, and a score. Look, I mean, he's one of the guys we've been hyping up this offseason. When tight ends do anything as a rookie, it's a pretty good sign they're going to be great, because most tight ends do absolutely nothing. But here are the only rookie tight ends with 8+ yards per target since 2000. Chris Herndon, Mark Andrews, Gronk, Hunter Henry, Heath Miller, Aaron Hernandez, Jordan Reed, Zach Ertz, George Kittle, and our favorite Broncos tight end, Noah Fant. So great game from him. The Yak's wild. Last year, only A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel averaged more yards after catch per reception. That's among among, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, everything. So awesome job by Fant. It's once Sutton comes back, I worry if he's going to be able to consistently get more than 5 targets like he did tonight, but either way, similar to Jonnu Smith, like he can make the most of the opportunities. In the backfield, Philip Lindsay had to leave early with a foot injury. Before that, Melvin Gordon was working as the lead guy, but definitely was a 1A, 1B type situation. Gordon got the 3 targets, and he's the pass down back, but, looking like a 60-40 kind of weekly split. Credit to Gordon for coming back strong after a fumble and kind of showing some of that broken tackle ability. This guy led the league in broken tackles from 2016 to 2018, but, whether or not he's going to get that full workhorse role with or without Lindsay, I don't see it happening. It seems like they really want to make this a 2-back committee of sorts. Once Lindsay left, they did bring in Royce Freeman. He had a nice catch and got some runs. So, Melvin Gordon, hey, he's going to be, I think, a weekly RB2 option, but don't really see it in his range of outcomes to post a top 10 or 12 finish at the position this year. So that was the Kicker Fest. Thank you and not thank you to Stephen Gustowski for putting us through that. Real quick, want to go through some waiver wire options. So I went on Yahoo and just looked at the roster percentages. If someone has, a better source out there you think maybe for what's better or more realistic for who's actually on the waiver wire or not, let me know. But, I just picked people under 50% on that. So if I'm listing anyone too obvious, I get it. Feel free to chastise me publicly on Twitter, but I'm trying my hardest for everyone out there. So quickly at quarterback, Gardner Minshew, only on 26% of the rosters. He was one of my guys going into the year. For him to go into Sunday, complete 19 of 20 passes, 3 scores, and add 19 rushing yards, it's wild because he's had a higher floor than that in the past. 5th in rushing last year at the quarterback position. He never threw fewer than 25 times per game. So I think week 1 was an exception. We're going to see him throwing the ball more. And when he's doing it, not this week is great because he's got the Titans who we just saw, make life pretty tough for that Broncos offense. But after week 2, this is why you want Gardner on your roster now, because after week 2, we get the Dolphins, Bengals, Texans, and Lions. 4 straight games where Minshew is going to be a borderline QB1. So go get him now if you're in a two QB league or, have had someone fail you like myself, unfortunately, with Tyrod Taylor. Right that wrong right now. Drop Tyrod, get Gardner. Apologies, everyone. We're going to live and learn, adjust, and, I'm happy to admit the mistakes. Don't want to take, the victory laps. We'll get better. So, unfortunate to see Tyrod only get those 7 rushing yards. But you know what? He doesn't seem like he's the same guy. The offense isn't fitting him as well. And Gardner Minshew, the dude might just have it. So get that dude on the squad. Running back, I was just surprised to notice some of these lower percentages. Alexander Madison, 45%, Chase Edmonds, 41%, Tony Pollard, 36%. If you need help, I get it, you can't afford to kind of keep these guys, but if your roster's in a good place, scoop these dudes up because we're going to see everyone blowing fab on Benny Snell and Nyheim Hines this week, and if any of Madison, Edmonds, or Pollard were available, they'd all be consensus. You should literally use your entire fab almost on these guys type players because those could be the guys where they would legit be RB1s if their team starter goes down. So I'm not saying don't look at these guys. Nyheim Hines, the Colts had 17 targets to RBs in week 1. The 49ers are the next closest team with 12. Just wild that the amount that Rivers involves both Hines and Taylor in the passing game. He's not Eckler, but he can be a mediocre version and be a solid fantasy asset, like a legit top 30 guy the rest of the way, even if he keeps getting this sort of workload. So the ceiling is even a little bit higher because, let's face it, Hines was getting some of even the early down and red zone work over Taylor. So I think Taylor's going to be the lead guy very soon. It's definitely sooner rather than later, but Hines can definitely provide some fantasy value. Benny Snell, talked about him earlier. Credit to him, fair play for looking good out there. But, it's not going to be a legit 3-down role. Just, hey, RB2 value is great. You want as many RB2s on the squad as you can get. Nothing wrong there. But, wouldn't recommend blowing 75% fab. Sounds like Connor isn't going to miss a ton of time. And, Anthony McFarland wasn't active. I go back to this quote that, Tomlin said, and, we've been talking up James Conner with it, and he mentioned how, if you don't have that featured guy, you want other guys that can kind of do different parts of it. So, I know we've been hyping up Conner getting the 3-down role, but it's not going to be there for Snell. We'll still take the 15 to 20 rush attempts. That's great, but, just don't go into these games expecting Snell to get, the RB1 workload for Steelers running backs, which has usually included, 70 to 80 receptions with guys like Bell and Conner in 2018. 2018. Malcolm Brown, yeah, look, he commanded the backfield game one. It seems like Henderson's going to get a little more involved as he gets healthier. McVay said things went according to plan. Henderson had the hot hand. They went with him. He's not going to be a guy that I think is going to be as consistent of value moving forward as Hines and even as Snell, potentially. I would prioritize Hines and Snell ahead of Malcolm Brown this week, but, they like him. Akers was so involved too, though. I just think this is a situation where, when the game probably doesn't go quite as well for them on the ground. I mean, let's face it, the Cowboys defense, when you take away Leighton Vander Esch first play, it's their first drive, whatever it was. I mean, it's just a below average unit. So I'm still a little skeptical that we're going to see this Rams offense, put up those sorts of points. And I don't think Brown has a stranglehold by any stretch on this backfield. He's not a bad guy to have on the roster. I mean, again, if you are having injuries, you need a spot start. Okay, Brown's definitely that guy, but just in terms of best case, ceiling outcomes, I don't think he's quite there with Snell, Hines, Madison, Edmonds, Pollard. A couple other quick guys. Carlos Hyde had more rush attempts than Carson because of game script. Look, hopefully they keep letting Russ cook, but just saying, if they go back to normal Brian Schottenheimer Seahawks football, wouldn't be shocking to see Hyde rack up some, 12-plus rush attempt games. Joshua Kelly got 5 of 7 snaps inside the 10-yard line with the Chargers. I still think we kind of overrate goal line backs. I mean, it's not going to be a situation where if Eckler, gets the ball down the 2-yard line, they're going to just sprint out of the game and make sure to get Kelly in there. There's a stoppage of play. A guy gets hurt. There's a timeout. Okay, maybe they get Kelly out there and they get their short yardage personnel out there. But again, like this happened with Melvin Gordon and Eckler last year, where Gordon was the early guy and he got a good amount of carries, but Eckler is still that lead back, 69% snaps. He's going to have more than one target moving forward. The big thing with Kelly to watch out for is Justin Jackson's availability, because he did have a quad injury, and that's why Kelly was getting the featured run as Eckler's backup. So hey, maybe he can become a Melvin Gordon and we can see the Chargers enable 2 top 24 running backs like they were doing the second half of last season. I'm a little skeptical. I think it was more of a good week one than a major sign of things to come. Finally, Jerick McKinnon got a lot of red zone snaps and played well, but for him to be really on the fantasy grid, I think we should have seen him really dominate the target share and not split it so much with Mostert. Moving on, wide receiver, Jalen Reagor, 38% owned in these Yahoo leagues. Amazing 55-yard catch. Played the most snaps with the Eagles of the wide receivers. So, Ertz and Goddard make it a unique situation. They're going to continue to be involved, but, don't be afraid to fire up Reagor sooner rather than later. Both Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson at 31%. These guys are fine to have on your bench. I mean, in these target distribution for the Panthers, it was DJ Moore with 9, then Curtis and Robbie at 8, CMC all the way down to 4. So maybe a situation where we're seeing the wide receivers get more and more involved on a team that's going to be in comeback mode a lot. Paris Campbell, elite slot receiver on the Colts, number 2 pass game option. He's getting design stuff and showed the ability to win on some real, crossers and stuff throughout the game. So love the Paris. And then Scotty Miller, 6%. Brady, the debut didn't go great for the guy, but I'll tell you what, he showed some real good touch on his deep balls. That arm is not washed by any stretch yet. He seems like the best fit alongside Godwin and Evans. Could see, Miller being the 4 or 5 receiver more weeks than not. But hey, Brady deep ball looks good. Maybe just in DFS, but, if you got a deep roster, deep league, give Scotty Miller a shot. And yeah, I mentioned Corey Davis before, but, among these guys, I'd say take Corey Davis ahead of Scotty Miller. I'm not going to overreact to it too much. I would still rather have the Panthers receivers, Reagor or Paris Campbell, ahead of Corey Davis for the rest of the year. Maybe he proves me wrong. Go ahead. Go to you, Corey. We'll see. Let's see it happen 15 more games. Quickly, tight end, Ebron mentioned the split snaps. Don't get into that. O.J. Howard is a little interesting. I mean, Gronk had 21 receiving snaps last week. O.J. Howard had 19, and Howard doubled his targets. So don't think it's a situation you're going to be lining up to play him, but, O.J. Howard, if he finishes as this kind of offense, his number 3 target leader, which is in reach, he's going to put up some numbers. Logan Thomas is getting some love, but, to his credit, it's not a committee. He played over Marcus Ball and Jeremy Sprinkle, but, still an offense I don't think it's going to be able to consistently enable another guy. The deep sleeper tight end I would go after is Jordan Akins, because he was actually out there as much as Cobb Fuller and David Johnson. He wasn't splitting snaps with Darren Fells for once. He was the guy. He seems good. Deshaun Watson's going to put up yards to whoever is out there. And finally, I would recommend streaming the Browns defense against that Bengals offensive line. I like Burrow now. I mean, if you got Burrow, it's time to start the guy. I think he showed, that mobility that we're looking for from the rookie QB, and he'll only get better throwing the ball. But, we got Myles Garrett out there against offensive line. It really didn't come close to blocking Joey Bosa and Melvin Engram to a lesser extent all afternoon. Definitely think the Browns could be a serviceable fantasy defense. So that's going to do it, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Ian Hartitz, and we will be back Wednesday with some game-by-game breakdowns from myself and fellow PFF contributor Dwayne McFarland. So make sure you all check that out. Thank you for listening, everyone, and until next time, take care.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel, and if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.